So it's time now for Culture. Clement Massey is going to be here in just a second to tell us about two books that go back in history to tell us about individual lives. But first, a historical figure who's still with us today. She was one of Hitchcock's famous icy blondes before she gave it all up for her prince. Grace Kelly died 30 years ago in a car crash, but her image has been omnipresent ever since. The former Princess of Monaco remains a fashion icon and a figure of fascination to this day.
A timeless beauty. 30 years after her death, the Princess of Monaco lives on in the vaults of classic cinema and the glossy pages of magazines the world over. She's been an unequalled influence on 20th century style. Many of today's fashion shoots refer to her blonde waves, her glacial poise. Grace Kelly's look has become a shorthand for elegance and luxury.
Grace Kelly's style is extremely elegant, very chic. It's a very pared-down look. She only wore pastel shades, ivory, pale blue, powder pink. She'd been a model, so she knew how to talk, how to walk properly.
She's from another era when Hollywood stars didn't pose naked for magazines and they didn't kiss their leading men lustily on screen.
Seen through a lens, Kelly was a heroine straight out of a fairy tale, and the legends outlived her. Last year, her son Albert married Charlene, a young woman who bears more than a passing resemblance to Grace Kelly. Her shy smile, a poignant reminder of the American actress that the Monegasque people took to their hearts. When she married Prince Rainier in 1956, many believed she'd slip into the old-fashioned traditional life of the principality, isolated on a rocky outcrop.
When Grace Kelly met Rainier III of Monaco, the Rock was a gloomy place.
For her fans, she was the perfect mother.
Est-ce que vous vous occupez personnellement de vos enfants?
Ah oui, le plus possible. J'essaie de passer beaucoup de temps avec les enfants.
Behind the scenes, Kelly was transforming Monaco.
She travelled the world and thousands of people saw her in Europe, the US and everywhere else, from Shanghai to Sydney. And that caught the eye of the younger generation in Monaco.
The principality threw off its stuffy old image, in large part thanks to Grace Kelly. She established a number of charities here and turned a dusty bit of coastline into a fairy tale domain fit for a princess.
Yeah, some amazing images there. Grace Kelly, of course. Joined here on set by Clement Massey, as you saw a few seconds ago for this week's book review. You brought with you two novels, haven't you, this week? In each one, the question of how one vanishes is at the heart of each story. And the first one you bought is called Lovers by Daniel Arson.
Here's the cover for the French edition. Going to be seeing the American cover in a minute. Lovers by Daniel Arson. Stewart tells the love story between two men during the 18th century in France. One is a young farm boy named Sébastien, and the other is a nobleman named Balthazar. They meet unexpectedly as Balthazar is thrown out from his horse. Sébastien, who knows about medicinal plant, is going to save Balthazar's life. And that's going to be a decisive moment for both boys. They're going to be struck by each other's beauty. I'm going to read you a little excerpt from the book, if you'd like, just to give you an idea of what it looks like. The boy kneels, crushes a small handful of yellowish leaves in his palms until they're reduced to powder, then pours the fragrant dust over the face of the young man, who seems to be asleep. Rainfall can sometimes be miraculous. There's a flicker of the eyelids, there are sighs and curses. The young man has sat up. Sébastien helps Balthazar to his feet, and when the man leans on his shoulder for a moment, he whispers, "I'm yours." From there on, Stewart, neither one will stop from thinking about the other. So there's a little touch of tale to this story.
Ooh, sounds like romantic stuff, doesn't it? So what about their relationship? How's it presented in the novel there? I mean, the times weren't necessarily easy for two men to choose to live together, obviously.
Well, obviously, and their relationship is presented as suspicious. Balthazar and his mother are regular guests to the court of Louis XV in Versailles, and the king enjoys their company, but once the son's relationship with the farm boy is known, once the rumor that he's a sodomite reaches Versailles, he is eventually presented with an ultimatum: repudiate Sébastien and live, or do not and die.
Okay, I suspect that what used to be a pleasant social life at the King's Court is going to turn into a bit of a nightmare.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And in telling the burning relationship between these two men, the author unveils, an amazing story of enduring love, but also tells about the slow disintegration of a family that will slowly sweep into oblivion. Balthazar and his mother will slowly disappear, and in a sense, so is Sebastian. But as their faces and bodies vanish, the love will remain, and that's the beautiful part of that novel. Daniel Larson's writing, I must say, is very poetic and spare, and that makes the novel a really captivating reading experience. The author brilliantly, in my view, he manages to bring out all of the humanity behind the relationship between these two men. And it's a very short novel, as you can see, but it is one that lives on with you long after turning the final page.
Okay, sounds like Clement enjoyed that one anyway.
I did, yeah.
Good. Well, that's always a good sign, isn't it? Well, he's brought with us as well an American novel. It's called The Buddha in the Attic by Julie Otsuka, and that's just come out here in Europe, and it's been already a huge success, isn't it, in France, Italy and Germany? It
has, and this is a French cover of the book, but she's American. The book came out a couple of years ago in the US, so you may have heard about it. The Buddha in the Attic tells the story of young Japanese women who were brought over to America as mail order brides at the beginning of the 20th century. They were simply sold to Japanese men who lived in the US. And the writer chooses a very original way to tell their story. There's no main character in this novel, but hundreds of individual little voices that pop up every now and then in the story. And the chapters are divided thematically. So that's a really a very daring way of telling a story, of building a novel. There's, for example, a chapter dedicated to their journey and arrival to the US, their first night in California, their first encounter with white people, the birth of their children, and so on. And what could have been a dangerous way of building a novel turns into a fascinating reading experience, really. Through the general experience, what the writer manages to do is tell individual stories very, very heartfully, and it's really amazing. It really is a beautiful story.
You told us at the beginning there about the kind of theme behind it,
Yeah.
Japanese women being brought over to America as mail-order brides. I mean, did you know anything about that before you started reading the book?
I didn't at all. I don't know if you did, but I didn't.
No,
But you may remember what happened to these Japanese families during World War II, right after Pearl Harbor. At once, they were considered as potential traitors to the US. So the author describes how each family left their home, how children left their schools to be taken away. No one knew exactly where. Entire neighborhoods were emptied from their population, and the Japanese families simply vanished, disappeared. They were sent away to camps.
Excellent. All right, well, that's Clement's two picks of the week. Sound like a lot of romance going on in those two books anyway. That's Clement Massé here on France 24 with his book reviews.
Thank you.
More coming up after the break. Latest headlines. Stay with us if you can.